Well, hello everybody. My name is Jason DeCosta. Thank you for joining me today on my show called Consistent Preterism. Thank you for joining me on my ride to work. I do this sometimes when I'm pressed for time and unable to dedicate an hour or 2 hours to audio in my office because I have a 20-25 minute drive each morning and my mind is jam-packed with stuff. So I need to release it. So anyways, Today I'm going to be talking about a couple topics. I'm just kind of rambling. I really didn't have anything prepared, but I was thinking about the Great Commission this morning and I'm going to be talking about that. But before I did that, I wanted to tell you about the cowards in both futurism, partial preterism, and full preterism. And for those of you who listened to or saw my audio, I don't know, a couple days back, you saw that I commented and I put out a challenge to anyone out there. Want to be futurist, want to be partial, want to be full, any of them. I put it out there and I asked them, I said, if you guys can explain this to me, this dilemma, I'd be very appreciative. And before that, I had already challenged a few people on the question and have yet to receive any even response. There's been no response to this whatsoever. It's not like they've even tried to respond and it's been a stupid response. There's been no response. So first, Sam Frost, you know, that bozo who was a full preterist and then realized that the proof is just too strong for futurism. That he had to go back to futurism. No, actually, really what happened was he realized a couple things. He realized that full preterism, the only consistent way to be a full preterist is to realize that there is nothing today in terms of salvation, redemption, and everything was complete. And he also realized that he wouldn't have any place in churchianity, really. The guy, if you've seen any of his recent YouTube work, which isn't very recent, I think it might have been a year ago, he looks like a damn fool. He's dressed up in Catholic garb, like some holy pope. He stands in front of a pulpit in his basement, in his mom's basement, and he preaches futurist Catholicism. He's a total train wreck. And he's the laughingstock of all full preterists, because he left the clarity of inconsistent full preterism and he went back to the train wreck that is futurism. And if you've listened to any of his audios and any of his teachings, it's cringeworthy. Absolutely horrific stuff. Because he's trying, again, to fit people into a narrative and to make it futuristic. He's trying to push a resurrection out in the future. He's trying to push a coming out in the future. The guy is a complete joke. And so he comes on my audio and he says, DeCosta is a moron. Funny, but still a moron. So rather than tell him what I really think of him and cut him to pieces, I just asked him a simple question. Okay, I said, listen, hey, Sammy Frost. I said, I got a dilemma that I need some help with here. I said, Paul in Colossians, right? He's writing to the Colossians, whom you'd say were foreigners. I said, and in Colossians, in that letter to them, he tells them that they were dead in the trespass of being uncircumcised in the flesh of the old wiener. All right, so I said, Mr. Frost, can you help me? I need to know why a foreigner would be guilty of violating, because that's what a trespass is. Why would a foreigner in Colossae, a true Gentile, be guilty of violating and trespassing a covenant commandment to be circumcised in the flesh of the old Don Johnson? And I heard nothing, okay? Oh, and I also included in that, I said, and then Paul goes on to say that Christ had nailed the handwritten requirements that were against them to the cross. So, Mr. Sam, please show me in the Bible where you are finding handwritten requirements that were against true pagans, true Gentiles. Where did Yahweh give handwritten laws and codified written laws to true Gentiles, to to foreign nations. I would love to see that, because Paul said Christ had nailed those handwritten requirements that were against them to the cross. So I waited a few hours. I heard nothing back. So then I prodded him again. I poked him. I said, "Hey, bozo, I asked you a question." And then he came back and said, "I don't engage with morons." So that's his answer. I gave him every opportunity to save Christianity. He could have been the savior of all things futurism by just answering that. In reality, he wouldn't have been able to answer it, and I would have had a million more problems for him. But he knew, and of course he wasn't going to answer because he has no answer. So then I just came back and I said, "Yeah, that's right. You got nothing." Okay? So one down. All right. Then Stephen Witless Dipset, Dunning-Kruger himself, he obviously put out that audio where he joined all his sentences into one long 21-minute run-on sentence, and nobody understood what the hell he was talking about. And so he got absolutely slaughtered in my response, and he just vanished. Maybe he'll pop back up and I'll stomp him again. But he's nowhere to be found. He probably got raptured. But anyways, I asked him the same thing on his channel. On that audio that he posted to his own channel, I went on there and I said, "Stephen, same exact question that I asked Sam. Help me out here." No answer. So I go back and check a few hours later, and he deleted my question from the comments. So I obviously posted it again, and I said, "Stephen, why'd you delete my question?" I said, I have a dilemma and I need your help with it, expert. No answer. So then I go back and check, and someone else had commented, busting his chops, that someone else who realizes this guy's probably the dumbest human on earth. And so this guy's, taking Witless to task, and Witless is ignoring my question. So finally I just said, "All right, it's clear you have no answers, whatever." So 0 for 2. So far I got one guy who refused to answer and called me a moron. One guy he's super into apologetics and defending against full preterism. You'd think he'd take every opportunity to refute IO openly and publicly for all to see. He vanished and called me a moron. The second guy, I went to his channel and I posted it. It got deleted. I posted it again. It got ignored. He had every opportunity to prove IO wrong. He ran away. He failed. Then I went over to Wayne Critchfield and his bozo compadre Christian disciples, who probably doesn't even have a GED. And I asked him the same question. I said, "I need help with this." Now, these guys are full preterists, so they should be able to help, right? One's a doctor. He has his own little morning musings. The other guy's got a cool YouTube handle called Christian Disciple. So obviously he's doing the Great Commission every day rather than arguing with me on YouTube. I'm kidding. He's on YouTube every day arguing. He's doing no Great Commission. But I asked him the same thing. I said, "Hey, I need help with Colossians. Can you help me out here?" Same exact questions. Ignored. Actually, no, it was deleted. The first time it was deleted. And then I brought that to their attention. I said, "Why did you delete my comment? Let me ask you again." So it hasn't been deleted this second time, but it has not been even acknowledged. Nothing. Silence. Crickets. Not a peep. So 0 for 3. Then some idiot called AD70 came on my YouTube audio the other day, and he commented and posted a link of David Curtis, the pastor from Berean Bible Church in Virginia. And I guess I didn't listen to the audio because it's probably horrific in terms of audience relevance, even though he claims he is a full preterist. He's doing nothing more than picking and choosing what applies to him and what doesn't, and he doesn't realize that Jesus said the gospel would go to all nations and then the end would come. So he's applying the gospel to people in a way today that's completely inconsistent and false. But I went over to, so he posts this audio. It was titled something like "Yeshua prays for us," and I'm sure he's probably applying the term elect to us, because obviously Jesus said, "I only pray for them, I don't pray for the world." So he's probably applying that to us today. But I went over there because this 8070 character laughed and said, "David Curtis has a message for you IOers" at minute 59. So I went over and I listened. You know what his message was? His message was, if you guys think the Bible's not about you, then why even study it? Just go away. It's the biggest self-defeating argument in history. That was his argument. That was the scriptural refutation of I.O., folks, from David Curtis, the Almighty. So I went over there, and I wasn't gonna, because I just feel bad, ruining these guys' thunder and showing them up a little bit. But Mike Bradley actually went over there first, and he told me that he went over there and he posted something. And he posted just a little summary of why his understanding of I.O. is wrong and why I.O. is correct. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go over there. It was just too tempting. So I went over there and I posted my Colossians 2 question. Very simply, I just said the same question to Mr. David Curtis, thinking, hey, this guy's got a big following, 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. He surely could be able to answer this, right? He's got to have an answer. That was 24 hours ago, as of when I'm recording this. Not a peep. And I addressed the question to him specifically. Not a peep. And I told him that once he answers that, I'll have many more problems for him to deal with. Not a peep. And guess what? They deleted Mike Bradley's comment as well. So Bradley posted a nice summary of I.O. They deleted that. I guess it was too powerful and too clear. And they ignored my comment and have not even answered it. All right, so what do we have here? We have Sam Frost, Stephen Dipset, Wayne Critchfield and his henchmen, Christian Disciples, and now David Curtis. 3 respected men. Whitset's not respected. He's a joke. And the other guy, Christian Disciples, is an idiot. So I won't include them in the respected category. But Sam Frost has respect from futurists, which is laughable. Full preterists all know he's a loser. So we got all these guys that cannot answer a simple question on Colossians 2. And eventually I'm going to end up asking Don Preston the same question and William Bell if I ever want to ruin their day. Because that question is going to lead into more questions, and they're going to realize that what I'm saying is true. So I just thought that was kind of funny and very telling that these guys have absolutely no answer whatsoever on a simple question like that. Why would the Colossians, whom you say are foreigners, be violating and trespassing a commandment to circumcise in the old Don Johnson Wiener Schnitzel? No answers. Why would the foreigners have handwritten requirements against them that Christ nailed to the cross? No answers. Very telling, okay? But anyways, just real quickly, I don't want to take up too much time today. I wanted to talk for a few minutes about the Great Commission. Now, for any of you who are a full preterist out there or know the full preterist theology and doctrine, you know that the full preterist, for the most part, understands that the Great Commission is fulfilled. They know that the Great Commission had to be fulfilled by the coming of the Lord. You won't find many that deny that. If they do, they're being completely inconsistent. Because Jesus commissioned the disciples to go to all nations, and then the end would come. And that same end is the end that he spoke about everywhere else. The end was his coming. The end was the gathering the elect from the four winds of the earth, the calling up. The end was the resurrection, the judgment. There's only one end that's talked about in these last days, and it was at hand. So Jesus commissions the apostles and disciples to go out to all of Jerusalem, to Judea, to Samaria, and to the ends of the land, for the purpose of gathering the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because that's only whom he came for. So the Great Commission is fulfilled. So then what I want to know is, what are they doing today? You see, they have a really interesting way of being inconsistent. They say, yeah, the Great Commission's fulfilled. Sure, all the elect came in. Yeah, they know they can't get around that argument. But yet they seem to think that there's more people coming in. They seem to think that the nations and the Gentiles are kind of like a side dish to Israel. But for those of you who have been following me and listened to the last handful of audios that I've shared, you know that that cannot be. The elect was one group, and that's all that's in focus here. The elect was comprised of two types of people, a Jew and a Gentile. But the Jews were Israelites. The converted elect Jews were Israelites, law-practicing Israelites. The converted elect Gentiles were non-law-practicing Israelites. Both parties combined to come together to be all Israel, the elect, the true Israel of God. Like Paul said in Romans 11, when the fullness of the converted Gentiles comes in, all Israel will be saved. The gospel had to go to those nations for the purpose of regathering the elect. The elect Gentiles are not different than the elect Jews. They are Abraham's seed and heirs according to promise. And they just so happen to be out in the nations. A Gentile is just someone living in the nations, not observing the law. So the gospel went out to the nations to gather the elect. Paul in Acts 13, I think it's 47 and 48, shows this very clearly, puts this whole case to rest. He says, as many Gentiles that were appointed to eternal life believed. That's what this fishing mission was all about. Jesus said, go out and my sheep will hear your voice. They will come. They didn't know who was his sheep. They didn't know who would come and who wouldn't. But they threw out the gospel message. The sheep, the elect, would hear his voice and would come. And you see many examples of this all over the pages of the New Testament where the gospel is preached in open air and not everybody comes. Some people come, right? Sometimes you have a large multitude that comes. Sometimes you just have a few. Sometimes you have a couple hundred, whatever the case may be, but it's all different. Paul in Acts 17, when he preached on Mars Hill, probably preached to a good amount of people, but at the end of that chapter, you see only a few came. Okay, only a few responded to that gospel. And I'll be doing an audio on Acts 17 soon. Just not going to get into it today, but it will be coming. But anyways, so yeah, the gospel was going out. It was fishing. The sheep would hear the voice. They didn't know who was a sheep. That was the mission. It was just to go out and gather. Do the work. Leave the rest up to God. His sheep would hear his voice, and they would come. But that gospel mission cannot extend beyond his coming because, as Christ said so clearly, the gospel would go to all nations, meaning it would gather in all Gentiles, and then the end would come. Same thing Paul said in Romans 11. And people, of course, get very tripped up when they come to Revelation 7 because they see two groups of people there, when in reality it's only one. They see the elect of Israel, the 144,000 being sealed, and then they see a new group of people, which was a great multitude from all nations. But really, all John's doing in Revelation 7, as I've said many times, is he's explaining that the gospel was going out in those last days and sealing the elect, whom were the 144,000 of all the tribes of Israel. Then John looks ahead and words and phrases that same body of individuals another way. He says, and then I looked and I saw this group of individuals standing clothed in white from all nations. So the process of being sealed is mentioned in the beginning. Notice, John doesn't say where the 144,000 elect of all the tribes of Israel are from. There's no location there. But then, when he sees them inherit their promise, he mentions that they're from all nations. And that's the promise given to Abraham, isn't it? That he would be the father of many nations, and he would bless him, and many nations would be blessed through him. This all goes back to the promise. It also goes back to Genesis 48, where Ephraim's descendants are promised to be a multitude of nations. The Israelites were all over the nations, right from the start. If you don't understand that, you don't understand the story. All throughout this story, Israelites were pushed out into the nations. They were everywhere. And the promise to multiply them like the stars in heaven was true. So you have this great multitude of Israelites all throughout the land, all throughout the known world. And you have the gospel going out to those nations, gathering them in. And yes, these 144,000 of all the tribes of Israel were indeed from all nations, tribes, tongues, and kindreds. That's what tongues was for. The reason why they had the tongues is so they could go out, they could preach the message in the tongue that the Israelite was speaking in. The scattered Israelite. That's what it was for. This mission was very exclusive. It was very limited to the elect. There is no gospel going out today. There is no Great Commission going out today. But yet these inconsistent full preterists want to somehow say that there is a gospel and there is a Great Commission going out today after the Great Commission and gospel was fulfilled. It just doesn't work. Totally, totally unsubstantiated. No biblical basis for it whatsoever. So again, there is no gospel going out today unless you're a futurist. And if you're a futurist, you just don't understand the Bible. And you ignore the plain words of Jesus, the apostles, and everything else the New Testament says. So yeah, ask your full preterist pastor, teacher, buddy. Say, hey, if the Great Commission was fulfilled and all the elect were gathered in by the coming, and if Jesus said in Matthew 24:14 that the gospel had to go to all nations and then the end would come, what's going on today? What are you doing today? What gospel are you preaching? What Great Commission are you preaching? Because a Great Commission demands an end, right? A Great Commission is, if when it's fulfilled, is when the inheritance comes. You're commissioned to do a job. So Jesus commissioned the apostles and the disciples to go out there and gather the elect. And like he says in John 6, every last one of them would be raised on the last day. That last day is the resurrection. And Jesus says he would lose none of them. And based on all the New Testament passages and everything else that we see, where the word mellow is used dozens of times in the New Testament, when it says there is about to be, mellow, a resurrection of the dead, we know that this is exactly what took place at the coming of the Lord. The resurrection, the judgment, the books were opened, the saints stood before God. They were judged according to their works done under the law. That's what this whole story was about. So that's pretty much all I want to say. If any of you clowns or trolls are listening and you want to take a stab at my Colossians problem, please do. Again, the question is, why would a foreigner be guilty of trespassing a commandment to circumcise when that was only given to Israel? And why would a foreigner have handwritten requirements held against them that Christ nailed to the cross? Show me, please, where God commands foreign nations in this story to circumcise the old Wiener Schnitzel. And show me, please, where God has given foreign nations handwritten requirements in this story. And if you can do that, which you can't, but if you can, which you can't, but if you can, I'll have more problems for you. All right? So I hope you all have a wonderful day. And that's all I got for today. I'll be back another place, another time, another day, and another rhyme. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Sing a song, make a friend, can't we all get along?